Good morning, Victor Reyes.
Good morning, Brian. How's it going, Mr. Auditor?
Fantastic. Thanks for joining me today on Cafecito con Colón.
Hope your cafecito is strong, Brian.
You got it. Fuerte, fuerte. Good morning, Dr. Lawrence Roybal. Good to see you this morning. Welcome back to Cafecito con Colón. I can't believe it's already been 23 hours since I last saw you.
Hey, Dr. Roybal.
Victor Reyes knows everybody. He is tuned in, dialed in, and ready to go. Good morning, Steven. Good to see you this morning. All right, Ryan Olguin. Good morning, my friend. Welcome back to Cafecito con Colón on this beautiful Tuesday morning. It is 9:01. We're going to get started here with Congressional District 1 candidate Victor Reyes as our special guest today. He's a superstar. We're glad he's here and looking forward to learning even more about him. All right. Got some good links for you today, and then we're going to get this party started. Victor, you got the best lighting over there, looking strong today.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I need all the good lighting I can get, Brian. I'll take it.
I wore my spring tie today. I got Snoopy on there.
I love Snoopy.
All right. There you have it, folks. Good morning and welcome to Cafecito con Colón. We're thrilled you're back. Today we have a great guest with us as we have started out featuring every single one of the Democratic candidates who stepped up to fill the vacancy created by our superstar, incredible hero, trailblazing Congresswoman who has been elevated to Secretary of the Department of Interior. That is, of course, Deb Haaland. She created that vacancy when the Senate confirmed her nomination by President Biden. And now we've got 8 Democrats who've stepped up to say, I want to run at that. I'm going to make sure that I continue to move New Mexico forward, that we continue to put Congressional District 1 front and center in that national landscape of 435 folks who are elected to lead this nation. And let me just say, we couldn't be more pleased than to be having Victor Reyes with us this morning. Good morning, Victor Reyes.
Good morning, Auditor Colón. Thank you so much for having me. Gracias por la oportunidad. Aquí tengo mi cafecito. Estoy listo. Vamos.
Vamos. Gracias por venir. Gracias por todo. Gracias por corriendo. Y gracias por todo, Jefe. I will tell you that it has been great to get to know Victor over the last few years. We spent a lot of time together on the campaign trail as he was incredibly helpful to Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham. He was the deputy campaign manager. He, we traveled about 70,000 miles in the Colón Integrity Express, and many of those miles we were traveling parallel with Michelle Lujan Grisham's team. And of course, Victor Reyes was part of the leadership of that team, did a great job, got the governor across the finish line in that election. And so he and I got to spend quite a bit of time together on the road. So it's great to be able to host you this morning here on this wonderful space that we call Cafecito con Colón.
I'm pumped, Brian. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
You bet. Now, I'm not sure if you've ever viewed an episode of Cafecito con Colón, but if you have, you know that part of my therapy here is to get some good news out there, to put some stories out there, news of the day. And I'll just take a few minutes to do that with our guest, Victor, if that's all right. And then we'll come right back to you.
Let's do it.
All right. Thank you so much. Okay, folks, let's see here. You know, we have had just a very painful week when it comes to gun violence in this country. And I just can't not talk about that just a little bit this morning. And I think Mr. Reyes certainly has spoken about this in the past in this campaign already. But let me just say that we are mourning with the families of the victims of the shooting in Boulder, Colorado. I know that I was exchanging text messages late into the evening and into the morning with friends from Colorado. I've got some great friends that serve in the legislature there who I respect a great deal. Former Speaker of the House, Kerry, and I know that Dr. Lang, who's with us this morning, she has a deep connection with that area. But this story here that I'm going to put up from the denverchannel.com features one of the 10 people that was killed in the mass shooting at King Soopers on Monday in Boulder, Colorado. Tally was shot and killed after being first to arrive at the scene on Table Mesa Drive just after 2:30 p.m. on Monday, according to the Boulder Police Chief Morris Harold. Officer Talley had 7 children. He joined this department when he was just 40 years old, and he has just an incredibly beautiful family that he has left behind based on his service in the line of duty. And so we mourn with all the families of Colorado who are just in shock. Again, Officer Talley had 7 children. The youngest was 7 years old. There's a story about that. Let me also give you the USA Today piece on that, which puts in context 1 week, 2 mass shootings. So just been a very, very difficult week. We've talked a lot about Atlanta. Good morning, Rosella Aaron Chisholm. Good to see you this morning. There is a piece. Good morning, Joseph Valdez and Dr. Lang and Christina Rogers. Thank you for being with me today. So there's the USA Today story that puts that context, 2 shootings, 1 week. And let me give you the last story here on the Colorado shooting, which also has another little take on it. This is really an AP story, and hopefully that helps you kind of center on this issue of gun violence in our country, and having to struggle with where do we go from here. Let's see here. The other thing I wanted to put up was actually some great news. I will say the USA Today did a nice job talking about Michelle Obama, Jennifer Lopez, Billie Eilish, and their work to get Congress to pass the voting rights bill. I know Victor has worked a lot on voter engagement and bringing marginalized individuals back to center, giving them a place and a space to be seen and heard, and voting is the best way to do that. So Amen. Former First Lady Michelle Obama, she leads or co-chairs When We All Vote. And she is doing a great job. And yesterday they did some congressional testimony here. I'm going to give you this link here. If you want to learn more about that, you can check it out. So I don't know who is going to motivate you to do that, whether it's J-Lo or whether it's Michelle Obama or Billie Eilish. Hopefully one of those 3 fantastic women who are leading that effort gets you to stand up and pay attention on that one. So let me give you a little bit of local news. It's now 9:08, and I'm going to try and get to our guest today by about 9:11 because I want to maximize the amount of time we get to learn and hang out with this superstar New Mexican running for Congress. So let me start with saying, as many of you know, I'm a big fan of Dion's. I love the founder. John is great. I love the CEO. They're just doing great things. They, in many ways, do such a beautiful job training young people in the customer service business. They will tell you they're not in the restaurant business, they're in the customer service business, and they do a great job. And they, the Albuquerque Journal today talked about the operation for Dion's salad dressings and pizza ingredients are getting a new home. They're moving into the right here around the corner from me to that former It's building on San Mateo. Did you ever make it to It's, Victor? You remember that little?
No, I don't think I did.
It was kind of like an amusement center. It had food, and then it had games and that kind of stuff. And it shut down several years ago, but it's a huge building. And I always wondered what was going to go in there because it didn't really have frontage. It was set off the road. So if you didn't know it was there, you kind of had a trouble finding it. Well, John Patton's legacy of continued growth for Dion's is now moving into that 53,000 square foot It's building. So now it's gone to Entertainment Center, industrial warehouse space. And so pretty cool. Of course, Goodman was at the center of that transaction. Phenomenal developer, just a great guy. And thank you to Goodman for being one of the only other places other than Heritage Hotels that I regularly support is Mas Tapas over at his place. And I'll be doing Easter. We got my Easter tie on today. Easter with Chef Quinones, Mark, my fellow Puerto Riqueño. You can't say American without the Ricans. So we're going to talk about the Puerto Ricans here coming up. So I'm going to spend that over there at Goodman's place and look forward to spending that time with them at Mas, Tapas y Comidas. Okay, so there's the story there. And then also, thank you to the Albuquerque Journal for lifting up the Albuquerque High Bulldogs and their soccer team as we transition to get our sports teams moving again. And then I will close with the big announcement. It is the worst kept secret in Albuquerque. Mayor Keller is running for re-election. We have enjoyed featuring some of his team members here on Cafecito con Colon, particularly last week. We had a trifecta of awesome women that helped lead his administration. He did announce his re-election bid. I'm sure we'll have him on Cafecito at some point. And let's see, finally, I'm going to get over, it's now 9/11. Let me give you, I wonder if Victor knows about this. He's been so engaged in his campaign. I mean, this guy never lets up. He is working 24/7 on the campaign, but I wonder if he knows about the new app, the NM Notify. He was probably involved on the front end of developing this because he was at the center of the universe for the administration, particularly as they did everything they could to keep the 2.1 million New Mexicans safe against this COVID-19. So are you familiar with this? Did you know they just rolled it out? You probably were involved in the front end, but they rolled it out.
I was involved in the very, very front end of it and looking at it, figuring out what the right system was. So I was excited to hear that it's getting rolled out.
Okay, good. So like I said, I knew he was probably on the front end of it. I didn't know whether he knew that it got rolled out, but this is an incredible app. So it's one of the key tools to fight COVID-19 and slow its spread. And you can put it right in your pocket. You can get that on Google Play or what's the other thing?
Apple Store.
Apple app. Yeah, the App Store. Thank you. You're a cool kid. I don't know all these cool kids. But New Mexico Notify, protect yourself and other New Mexicans. Add this to your phone to fight COVID. Help New Mexico stop the spread. And so check this out. They just rolled it out. Victor was involved in the front end, and now he gets to celebrate its rollout because he's a little distracted because he wants to be your congressperson. The last thing I'm going to say, again, Victor did a lot of work on this. I am so proud that we are at the top of the list when it comes to vaccine deployment, taking those vaccines and turning them into vaccinations. We have passed the 1 million vaccination mark. We did that last week. I posted it on my Facebook page. We're now at 1,045,000. I'm sorry, that is the total doses administered, but the total doses received in New Mexico is almost 1.2 million. We're pushing that 40% mark, right? 40%. We're at 39%, folks. 652,000 people have gotten their first dose, and almost 400,000 people are fully vaccinated. So that's out of 1.7 million people who are eligible for vaccinations. Once we've moved into this next phase, this B phase, we will, just about everybody's going to be eligible. So now it's a matter of getting the, I'm going to call it inventory for lack of a better word. Supply is the right word, I guess. The supply of vaccines to New Mexicans and getting them deployed. I will tell you that my sister got her vaccination. I have heard time and time again, if you go to the pit for your vaccination, it's going to blow your mind. That operation there is fantastic. Aleli got her first shot at Walgreens. She's an educator. She's going to be required back in the classroom. The day after the governor made that decision that the schools were going to be in on April 5th, I will tell you, this even exceeded my expectations. The day after the announcement, Aleli got her text that she was in line because she's an educator. So very, very impressive. Let's keep it going, folks. Make sure we turn those vaccines into vaccinations, and let's protect one another. Make sure you continue to mask up. I've got Passover coming up, so that's this weekend. To all my Jewish brothers and sisters, here's my mask for Passover. You like that? All right, here we go. So that's coming up on Saturday. We'll have our Passover. So look, I want to just say thank you to everybody, particularly Health and Human Services. Thank you to the Department of Health. Thanks to all the cabinet members in the Lujan Grisham administration that stepped up and said, it's all our lane. We all need to be focused on protecting New Mexicans, and that's why we are where we are today. Whereas yesterday, for the day before yesterday, I'm sorry, we had 0 deaths in New Mexico. That was the first time that has happened since October. Folks, that's 5 months. And yesterday, I think we had less than 10. And so we are really trending in the right direction, and thanks to the administration for that. So with all that, I'm going to finally, Victor's probably thinking, man, does this guy ever stop? Like, when's my turn? And
I'm all about the news, especially when it's good news. And, you know, people getting vaccinated, folks knowing, having more tools to know when they've been potentially exposed. all good things. We are doing an excellent job of fighting this pandemic in this state, and we are the light at the end of the tunnel. We can see it. So I'm all in, Brian. You keep talking.
Thank you, buddy. Well, we're right at 9:15. I wanted to go 4 more minutes. I wanted to go 4 minutes short today, but I couldn't help myself because I got excited about the vaccines. But it's on point because Victor Reyes was part of that work from the very, very beginning. From day one, Victor was helping organize. He was helping making sure the legislature was engaged and tuned in to what we were doing in all 33 counties of New Mexico. Victor was the legislative liaison for the governor, which really just means he had his hand involved in everything that went on in New Mexico, because you can't do legislative work if you're not tuned into every bit of the administration's efforts and agenda. So keep that in mind as I get ready to introduce this dynamic young person who's about to share with you his vision for the 1st Congressional District and why he is running. Here's what I'm going to do, Victor, if you don't mind. I'm going to read a little bit of your bio. Now, there's tons of stuff. Google Victor Reyes. You'll be there all day reading about the great work that this guy has done for New Mexico. I'm going to read a couple paragraphs that I pulled down, and then I want to show a phenomenal 90-second clip, just a great clip. If you don't mind, Victor, you rolled out a few things, but the one that really kind of caught my attention as being really absolutely superior to many of the things certainly that I put out there during my political campaign, this one particularly touched me. It's called Underestimated. You mind if I show that today?
Roll the clip, my friend. Let's do it.
Okay, good. So here we go. Victor Reyes is a Democratic candidate for New Mexico's 1st Congressional District, and he represents the next generation of progressive leadership in New Mexico. He is a next-gen kind of guy. As a community organizer and former legislative director for New Mexico Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham, he has rooted his campaign on the simple notion that our communities can no longer wait for the right moment for bold solutions. Victor's been at the forefront of the state's efforts to support educators, curb gun violence, build New Mexico's economy, and protect our air, land, and water. His leadership and vision helped create 2 of the most productive legislative sessions in history. Prior to his government service, Victor built a record of progressive advocacy as a community organizer and advocate in New Mexico. As a political and legislative director of Conservation Voters of New Mexico, he led the successful opposition to anti-conservation legislation in the 2015 state legislative session. This guy, he started before it was even legal in New Mexico for him to be working. As the campaign director for Progress Now New Mexico, he championed progressive candidates and issues, pushing back against former Republican Governor Susana Martinez's destructive anti-working family agenda. Victor's the National Board Chair for Catholics for Choice and the former chair of New Mexico's Community Development Council. If elected, Victor would be the very first actually, LGBTQ plus person to represent New Mexico in the United States Congress, the first openly gay Mexican-American elected to Congress in history. And he'll become the youngest Democrat in Congress. Let me just say that this guy has been a trailblazer for many, many years. He's been working hard. He's always what I call punched above his weight in getting the job done. And I just forgive the sports analogy, but when I think of Victor, I see him out there in the guerra. He's out there on the front lines, just making it happen, just really working hard to advance his agenda. And I just really, really have appreciated his ability to lean in when it's super, super important. So with that, let me take the liberty, Victor Reyes, of showing this quick clip, and then we'll take it to you, okay?
Let's do it.
All my life, people have underestimated me. When I was young, I was bullied for the way I talked. I was underestimated in college when I took on extra classes, worked a full-time job, and graduated at age 20. I was underestimated as a community organizer, working to defeat legislation that would have hurt our air, land, and water, and helping stop bills that would have restricted abortion rights. And as the governor's legislative director, even some in our own party didn't think we could increase the minimum wage, pass climate change legislation, or that we should convene a special session to get New Mexico families the direct economic relief that they so desperately needed during the pandemic. But through grit, through hard work, through determination, I proved them wrong. People underestimate what our community can do too. And for too long, we've been told that we had to wait for what will really change things. Medicare for all, a Green New Deal, comprehensive immigration reform, canceling student loan debt. But you know what I say? The time for waiting is over. I'm Victor Reyes, and I'm running for Congress to fight for the change that'll make a real difference in people's lives. The change that just can't wait. Never underestimate what this community can do. I hope you'll join us.
Para el Congreso, ladies and
Congreso.
gentlemen, that is the incredible Victor Reyes right there in 90 seconds. Victor Reyes, welcome to Cafecito con Colon. I do not get bored of watching that clip underestimated because it resonates with me. I am always telling my mentees, never let other people put up guardrails on what your capacity is. When
Amen.
folks tell you you're taking on too much, you tell them, look, there's only one person that knows my capacity, and that's me. When I wanted
Amen.
to be class president and student body president, and I wanted to be president of the National Honor Society and the chess club all at the same time, they said, you can't do all that. I said, don't tell me what I can and can't do. I said, you can criticize me if I fail, but you can't tell me what I shouldn't step up to do. And Victor Reyes, nobody's been able to tell you what you can do and what you can't do. At 20 years old, graduating from college, making a difference every day. Victor Reyes, welcome to Cafecito con Colon.
Thank you, Brian. Appreciate you for having me. It's true. And, you said that I punch above my weight. Well, New Mexico punches above its weight too. And so that is the story of our community. That is the story of our people. And so I'm just very honored to be here with you today and I'm excited for this conversation.
Well, it's going to be a good one, folks. Let me just say, I think and I already mentioned mentors, but tell us a little bit more. We got a nice sense of I feel like that underestimated clip gives us a good sense of your educational journey, some of the things you had to overcome. You talked about being bullied as a child because of the way you spoke and the way you maybe carried yourself. And so I got a good sense of your educational journey, but maybe you can give us a little bit more of the personal side, family and community and where you grew up and kind of, I always talk about it's important and critical in our folks that are running for office. Before we decide to support them, we need to understand the lens they look through because that informs their decisions and how they're going to lead. And all of us have complicated lenses. And Victor, I'm hoping you can help the Cafecito colleagues, my extrovert therapists who've joined me this morning, help us understand and really see through the lens you look through, Victor Reyes.
Yeah, sure. So I grew up on the border and I grew up in a family that, shares the story of a lot of families across our community. My dad dealt with substance abuse, alcoholism, drug addiction, and that weighed very heavy on our life. My mother at many times was a single mother. And, my mom was one of the greatest and most incredible role models for me growing up and someone who I look up to and admire in a very real way, because even despite those challenges, the financial insecurity that we found ourselves facing, the difficulties, the mental trauma. I remember in a very real way being a little boy and lying in bed, nervous about what the next day could bring. I would have stomach aches and I'd be so worried. And, despite all that, my mom made it a point to teach us that we should give back and that we should serve others. She was a longtime full-time volunteer in public schools. Primarily, she would focus on her work with the special education children. And the way that my mom loved those children is something that it continues to really warm my heart to this day and to think about. And I get emotional thinking about it because my mom has an incredible capacity to love and to love others. This is a woman who would wait every day, hours after school let out. We would do our homework in the car and we'd do it. And she'd do it so that she could wait for cafeteria school employees, our custodians, for them to get out so that she could give them rides back to their homes so that they didn't have to walk an extra hour to get back to their homes. And I'll never forget that. That for me was my role model for public service. And the first time that I actually got involved and that I can remember in direct advocacy was when my school had a case of black mold that parents were worried that their kids were going to get sick. And the school district didn't really seem intent on doing anything about it. And so my mom was part of a group of rabble-rousing parents that all got together to put a little pressure on the school district. And there was a time when my mom made a deal with my first grade teacher to get me out of class a little early so that she could take me to a protest that was happening outside of the school district. And so we were there with our signs, and I was super excited. And, I was in the thick of it, and I was, chanting, and the news camera shows up. And so my mom looks at me and says, Junior, Mijo, you need to start coughing. And I said, Mom, I don't need to cough. I'm fine. I feel fine. And she pulled me aside, and in the way that a Latina, Hispanic mom can, she looked at me, grabbed me, and she said, no, Mijo, you need to understand there are students that will need to cough, that are coughing, and you need to be their voice in that moment right now. And so I started coughing my little heart out. I started coughing so hard I started choking. It was a very realistic visual for the news camera. And then I gave a little stand up talking about what an injustice it was to make students go into an environment to learn where they would get sick. And, to talk about someone, my bedtime stories growing up, Brian, were Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech. And she'd finish the bedtime story, and she would tell me, tienes que ser una voz para la gente que no sienten que tienen las palabras o el poder. You've got to be a voice for the people who feel like they don't have the words or the power themselves. And that's what I've been striving to do throughout my entire life. And, we all are facing so much adversity in our lives, but, we have to be able to be there for others. And I've striven to do that every single day of my life.
I love that. What grade were you in, Victor, when you were fighting the mold?
First grade.
First grade, 6 years old, and Victor Reyes is standing up to camera, delivering those lines like his mom taught him to. Hey, that is awesome. No wonder you're a great advocate. When you start at 6 years old, you kind of got to jump on the rest of us, and that's why you're so effective. And
I had no choice. I did more time in community meetings than I did at playgrounds. I was there doing my puzzles and doing my coloring books in the back. And then after a while, my mom realized that I could pass out pamphlets and that I could go and bother people in a much more effective way. And so I was definitely in the thick of it.
I tried that with Rafael, and he never got to really pass out the pamphlets because he'd get to the first and second person, and then he'd start talking, and then he'd be talking and then everybody else wouldn't get a pamphlet. So Rafael didn't really serve me in that way.
That's hilarious.
And now he's a big old fancy biomedical engineer making a difference in the medical world, and I just I'm very, very proud of him. But Victor, I literally can picture you being that advocate at 6 years old, and I wish I had met your mom, and so I hope that I just the authenticity that comes with really understanding at a young age that you can be an advocate for people who can't advocate for themselves is very, very powerful. Even the sign behind you speaks to that, and I just think that I appreciate. That's one of the things I'd appreciate if you go to Congress, you do take that kind of centered approach of saying, look, there are a lot of people that will never have the opportunity to run for Congress, and I have to be their voice because they don't have one.
And it's exactly what we said in the video, right? We underestimate the power of our community, and we can't underestimate the power of our voice. And it's wherever it is, whether it's in the biomedical field, whether it's being a community advocate, we all have a role to play in being there and being a voice for others. And even now, Brian, throughout this campaign, I've been helping people navigate healthcare because it seems like half of New Mexico has my cell phone number. And so people are calling me, how do I sign up for the vaccine? I can't get into this medical appointment. Unemployment isn't getting back to me. Can you help me out? And that's just the person I am. And I probably drive my campaign team to drink because I spend a lot of time doing that type of work still, because it's important, and we all have to do whatever we can to give back to others despite whatever else is going on in our lives. And so I'll always be there for the community. That's just who I am, and it's what I love to do. And I'll always be there.
That's great. It's that servant leadership that we talk about so often and we don't see often enough. So thank you for presenting that and actually talking to us about what that looks like, because I think that's exactly what you just did. Tell us a little bit about, we know we talked a lot about your mom. We know that, I will tell you that we have another common data point. My father, before I was born, was a severe alcoholic, very severe. He had muscular dystrophy and dealt with a lot of pain. And one of the things I'm grateful for is that when I was born, he chose, me and my sister and my brother instead of the bottle. But that was a very, very difficult part of his story and his life. And so I know that that informs, again, who we are, on how closely we are connected to these issues that plague, frankly, our community at a higher rate than other communities. When I say our communities, I say, I guess I'm referring to communities of color. And so thank you for sharing that with us. Can you tell us, so sometimes when you've got that situation, a father, you're deeply in touch and connected to your mother. Who are the other mentors in the life of Victor Reyes that could have brought forth such a dynamic young person who really is ahead of his time? The commercial really puts it out there so beautifully that you have always been running. There's no, slow, medium, fast. Like it's always fast. Like graduating at 20, that's a big deal. Being as advanced as you were with your educational journey, you've been in a hurry to get where you're going for a very long time. And for me, that inspires me because I know that takes a lot of effort. Who were your mentors that allowed you and fueled you to do that?
I've had so many, Brian. This morning, actually, I don't know what it was. You have these moments where people touch your heart, and when they pass, that they're thinking about you. And during my time here and working with the governor, I had an opportunity to get to know a man by the name of Everett Chavez, who was a former governor of Cuba Pueblo, of Santo Domingo Pueblo. And I don't know what it was. You feel like with certain people you have this affinity with them right on. Didn't know him for very long before he passed. Maybe about a couple of years. But he took me under his wing to teach me understanding of tribal sovereignty, the understanding of community, of giving back. He told me, I got to talk to him about environmental justice, about the role and how we're all connected to one another, about fighting for healthcare. And I was thinking about him this morning and how why, and I was thinking, and the reason that I was thinking about him, I'm like, why did he spend so much time with me? Why did he, take the time? I didn't know him. I wasn't from his community. He didn't have to mentor me. He didn't have to call to check in to see how I was doing often. But Everett touched my heart in a very meaningful way. And when I was the assistant transition director, I advocated for him to be the co-chair of our our education committee for the transition team. And he served as the co-chair and was started and in the early conversations was really critical into providing a perspective from the lens of tribal sovereignty about what education meant. And we lost him during that transition. We stopped hearing from him and didn't answer the phone, and everybody said, can you get a hold of Everett? He's not answering. I'm like, that's just not like him. And he had a heart attack and he had passed away. And so I miss him every single day that I think about him. And this morning I felt his spirit. My grandfather, who passed away 2 years ago, was another mentor of mine and leader. He made sure that when especially during times that my family life was its most unstable, that he was there for us and made sure that, we didn't feel like we had nothing, that we were taken care of, that we knew that we were going to be okay. And that sense of just calm that he brought to any conversation, to any situation, is something that I will always admire and respect. The governor has been an incredible mentor of mine. And during this pandemic, I've never seen the courage that someone like her has, despite whatever political pressures, which there were many and that we all felt. She was there in a very real way, always making the decision that was in the best interest of our communities and the best interest of the state of New Mexico to keep us safe. And it's just been shown what that type of courage means. And so I'll always really hold her close to my heart in the way and the brand of leadership that she has taught. And I really admire her.
I love that. That is great. And maybe why you felt the Gov's spirit this morning is because it is another one of our mutual connections and
Really?
our data points together. And so thank you for sharing that. That's personally significant for me that you shared that, and a fond memory of a great leader that was in my world and obviously very, very important in your world. So thank you for that. Thank you for that. You talk about all these great leaders that you've gotten to work with over the years, and particularly with the Gov and with Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham. And I know that, you were really instrumental a few years back when the Senate Democratic Caucus had a lot of work to protect education resources.
Mhm.
And it seems to me like when I look at your journey, you're being such a consistent champion for education in New Mexico is really at least one of the things I'm most grateful for and appreciative of. And I wanted to see if you could help us really understand what that was like, because you've consistently been a fighter for education resources and for our children and for our families as it relates to education.
Education is critical. We talk about the opportunity gap, right? And what does that mean? That means that there are students that face different struggles, different challenges in the path to achieve a world-class education. There's students that go home to an empty refrigerator. There's students that are the caretakers of their brothers and sisters, of a grandparent, that have to help provide for their family. And those very real struggles are something that we need to address. And so, when I was with the Senate Democratic Caucus, when I was working with Senator Worth, Senator Stewart, credible leaders, we were very clear that we needed to protect every single dollar that we could for public education. All the while, it seemed like Governor Martinez wanted to dismantle it in every single way possible. And so the fight to protect that, the maneuvering that had to happen, was a very real glimpse and a very practical experience to the legislative strategy that goes in when it comes to creating a budget. I was at the table during those negotiations, during those conversations about the budget. We had a governor that refused to meet with the legislature. I think there was 2 meetings that the legislature got to have with the governor. I was in one of those meetings where Senator Worth was pushing back on the governor, Martinez, against her disastrous cuts. She wanted to cut Medicaid. She wanted to cut public schools. It didn't seem like there was anything that she wanted to cut, that she didn't want to cut, that was something that was meaningful for our families. And so standing up for educators in that moment was important. And
Can I tie a thread? Can I tie
Yeah.
a thread real quick? Because when you're telling that story, and it ties back to the governor that we were just talking about, but one of the other things that is a stark difference between your work in this administration and with Secretary Trujillo and the governor, Governor Martinez never met with the tribal leaders. She didn't have the summit with the governors. And when you talk about those cuts and not having meetings with the legislators, the other thing that I think was a huge disservice is she failed to really engage our 23 Pueblo and tribal governors in New Mexico. And it was a new day in this administration. And you and Lynn Trujillo, our Secretary of Indian Affairs, and Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham flipped the switch on that. And
Absolutely.
what I mean is, it was dark when it came to communications between tribal leaders, Pueblo leaders, our Native American, our indigenous leaders, and the administration. And you flipped the switch. You brought the light. And I feel like there's a thread there because we were just talking about Gov and
Absolutely. And again, Everett, incredible advocate. Governor Chavez, incredible advocate for education, and the type of perspective that you have to listen to. And so in our first tribal summit that we had, one that had not happened in previous years and that the governor had decided not to attend, we talked about education. Yep. We talked about how our sovereign nations looked at through that lens to talk about education issues and the very real challenges that they are facing. I'm really proud to have been part of the discussions when we talk about impact aid, getting more federal resources directly to schools that serve our sovereign nations and the communities within them. That crossed the finish line this legislative session. Proud of the work that I did, the conversations that we had that led up to that point. With the governor, we worked on in our first legislative session, I helped pass community schools legislation, something that I really want to work on in Congress to get more resources for community schools that provide wraparound services for our students, whether it be behavioral health services, dentistry, general health care, whether it's GED classes for the parents, whatever a particular community needs, being able to provide those resources. I think the community school model is one that has really proven that it can close the opportunity gap. And we passed legislation to help expand that statewide in the 2019 legislative session. I'm committed to advocating for more funding for our community schools. In Congress, we work to raise educator wages, to invest more into public education. And so, that is a fight that I take very close to my heart, and one that I will continue to work on in Congress.
We love that, Victor. I'll tell you that this household's a big supporter of community schools. Aleli's been teaching in the International District, which, as you know, in this first congressional district, it is one of the deepest pockets of poverty in this district that you want to represent. And Van Buren Middle School, she's been there for 20 years. And we've had some great community school leaders. Unfortunately, they've moved on. Our director of ABC Community Schools have moved on, got cherry picked and moved on to another state. But we've continued to try and embrace that community school model. I will tell you that Aleli, as an educator on the front lines, she's a huge advocate for that model. I'm a huge advocate for that model. So thank you for really standing up tall for that. Can you speak real quickly? One of the things we haven't talked about at all on Cafecito over this last year, but it's been a very popular kind of, at least in our circles, I think a popular movement is talking about student loans.
Mm-hmm.
I've been paying for student loans for a long time. I will continue to pay until they're paid off. Going to law school was not an inexpensive enterprise. And although I will say that UNM School of Law is one of the best values in education in the country, coast to coast, and I'm grateful to be a graduate there. Tell us a little bit about your perspective. I know that you've spoken about that pretty frequently, so I want to give you an opportunity to tell our viewers about that.
I appreciate it. And it's one of those issues that, my generation, we talk about it a lot. And I speak to so many of my friends or fellow community members about it. And, I was talking to a friend the other day, and we were talking about someone who went to school to study business, really wants to be involved in the business world. And he was telling me, I'm ready to start it. I have a concept, I have my business plan, but I can't get the capital to start my business because I have this immense amount of student loan debt that is weighing me down. And, especially, Brian, in communities of color, on potential entrepreneurs of color, people who want to find financial security, student loan debt weighs us down in a way where we can sometimes often never see the end of the tunnel. And so, eliminating student loan debt is something that I think is critical. At the state level, in the 2020 legislative session, I worked to help try to pass the Opportunity Scholarship. And for those of you that don't know what that means, it was a scholarship that would have created the potential for free public college at a New Mexico public college or university for any New Mexico resident. And that legislation received $0 in the budget when it passed the House of Representatives in 2020. And so I was clear about the need to do something about making college and university affordable for every single New Mexican, that they didn't see this mountain of student loan debt that was going to come through. And so I went to the Senate and I negotiated with some of the toughest Democrats, Republicans, to make sure that in the budget, we were able to get close to $20 million in that budget for the beginnings of the foundation of the Opportunity Scholarship. And
I love that, Victor. Let's make sure that we underscore that. That is a perfect example of you leading and working across the aisle. It's one of the things that I'm going to talk to every candidate who wants to run for Congress, because I believe that we can't get anything done if we shut out the other side. We've got to bring people to the table, allow them to feel like they're part of the process, because if they're part of the solution, they are going to help move us forward. And you have really done a great job highlighting a great example of working across the aisle.
It's a unique, skill set that I bring, Brian. I have an ability to never compromise on our values, but to meet people where they are to deliver change. I've helped defeat anti-abortion legislation in the Republican-controlled House of Representatives with the help of Republicans, because I've shared my values, I've shared my perspective as a person of faith, my personal experience. I talk to them about the economic aspects of what reproductive health care and justice means. And with their help, we defeated with the help of a Republican, I helped defeat a piece of legislation known as the Infant Born Alive Protection Act, which equated to nothing more than a ban on abortion later in pregnancy. I helped get comprehensive tax reform done in the 2019 legislative session, increase the working families tax credit by working with a diverse set of legislators. And that perspective, that ability to actually get legislation across the finish line, to be a change maker in a very real way, is something that I think sets me apart and something I think that this district deserves.
That's great. I really, really highly value that skill that you have, and I've seen it. And I think that's where the governor got it right when she said that you were the one to go down there and to collaborate and work with 112 folks who all have different agendas. The folks in the upper chamber, those 42 members of the Senate, the 70 members of the House, you were the one that was the conduit, the go-between, and the one that had to make it happen if you were going to move that executive agenda forward. And you can't do that if you're not working across the aisle. Isn't that right?
You can't do that if you're not working with anybody who wants to make a difference in their community. You're not doing that if you're not building coalitions with the right stakeholders, bringing their voices to the table. You got to know how to do all of that package. And so, that type of leadership, that brand of leadership, I think is critical.
Well, that's it, folks. That's Victor Reyes and more. You got to love that. I appreciate it so much. Let's talk, Victor, a little bit about one of the things that I'm curious about, and maybe because it's my own anxiety over the years with how we built our campaigns and kind of the behind the curtain work. And I always wonder if I got it right and if I treated people the way I wanted to be treated. I'm always conscientious about that. And so I wonder, can you tell us a little bit about your campaign team and kind of how you structured this incredibly different bid for Congress, a bid for Congress that we haven't seen in this district in a generation. It's a rush to March 30th, and then it's going to be a rush to June 1st. When the rest of this district will get to vote. Thank you, Cooch Jacobus, for always reminding me to tell the public they get to vote on June 1st, that we are going to get our nominees from our parties. The Republicans, I think, are going to do theirs on Saturday. We're going to do ours on the 30th, and we will then rush to June 1st. Early voting will start a few weeks before that. I will try and drop the dates in the chat today. This is a much different kind of campaign. Tell us how you've structured your team and what that looks like for Victor Reyes for Congress.
I'm super proud of the grassroots campaign team that we've put together. I started off announcing this campaign with a group of grassroots co-chairs from across the district, individuals like Joe Noriega, individuals like Romain Serna, who's been part of this community and the Democratic Party for a long time. I'm very proud to have her support. Individuals like General Judy Griego, the former Veterans Affairs Secretary at the state level, the first female Brigadier General in the New Mexico National Guard.
Hey, Victor, I'm going to interrupt you again. I do this for everybody. So just so you know, I'm not treating you special, but you're talking about the Brigadier General. Didn't you have like a cafecito with the Brigadier General?
I did. I had a visits with Victor is what we call them. And we talked about Veterans Affairs issues. And it's a great conversation. Everybody, I'm going to do some self-promotion. Go check it out. It's fantastic. A big supporter, just an incredible advocate for veterans and military families in our state. And so we put together these grassroots team. I have an LGBTQ grassroots organizing committee, and my organizers, the people who make up my campaign team, all under the age of 30, young individuals that want to make a difference in their community, have been hitting the ground running in this campaign, talking to community members, getting people involved in the process. I'm sure that there are a lot of people out there that are sick of hearing from them. Thank you for answering their calls. They are incredible. They work harder than anybody I know. And that means the world to me, that people are willing to do that to make sure that folks know who I am and they know my message. And I'm touched every single day by the work that they do.
I love that, Victor. Thank you very much. I, by the way, love the Brigadier General. I think she's terrific. And that's why I wanted to underscore it. And I'm posting a link to that fantastic visit with Victor in the chat here. So you'll be able to find it easily. So you bet. I love that conversation. And you also had a great recent conversation with Ana Marie Dahl, who is also going to be a guest on Cafecito, I think early April. So that's coming up with Ana Maria. And tell us, you talked about that beautiful landscape of people that are helping you with the campaign. I wonder, we've talked a little bit about you kind of being in a hurry to get where you're going. And if you ask me, when I look at your journey, the get where you're going is a deep desire to make a difference in the lives of as many people as you possibly can. And that's a beautiful mission. And if I got that wrong, you can correct me, but that's what I feel when I read about you, when I talk to you, when I spend time with you, when I see you smiling, when you talk to others. It's like that heart that you bring to the campaign is really about helping as many New Mexicans as you possibly can with your work. And here we are, 1 week and 1 day, I think, since your 25th birthday. Am I right? How old are you?
My 29th birthday.
29th.
29th.
Look, I shaved another 4 years off you.
Shaved another 4 years. Hey, it means that the stress is not doing any damage to my skin. I will take it.
You know, people talk about how much older Tim Keller and I look now since we ran for mayor 4 years ago. Somebody was talking about that yesterday because he just announced his reelect, right? So they said, man, you and Tim really have aged over the last few years. And I said, yeah, you're probably right. I said, mine, my hair's falling out. But you, the campaign has invigorated. You make you look like a 25-year-old and a 29-year-old journey. But let's talk about that 29, because at 29, happy birthday. I think it was was it the 18th, 19th? When was your birthday?
17th on St. Patrick's Day.
Oh, that's right. You're a St. Patrick's baby.
Ya casi me llamaron Patricio, but I have too many cousins named Patricio already.
So they said, forget that. St.
No.
Patricio will have to get honored in a different way when it comes to the Reyes clan, because you were not going to be San Patricio reborn. So let's talk a little bit about what that means for the next generation, what that means to you personally. Again, it's another data point where Victor Reyes is in a hurry to get there, to make that difference. And you want to make that difference in Congress at the young age of 29. You'd be the youngest member of Congress, if I've got that right.
Democrat.
Right? The youngest Democrat in Congress, the youngest Democrat in Congress, the body of 435 from all 50 states and territories. Let me just say, that's just impressive in itself. And you present in a way that is far more informed than I could have ever been at 29. And it's just so impressive. And that authenticity and informed spirit will make a difference in Congress should you be elected. Tell us about what that means to you. What do you say when people say, que pues, este joven, este mocosito? What do you say when people say Victor's too young to go to Congress? It's not his time. He can wait. He's only 29 years old, barely. What do you say to those folks?
You know, I appreciate that question because I do get it often on the campaign trail, right? There's some folks that want to equate my age with my life experience, and that's just not the case. You know, at a very young age, I've been delivering on some of the major accomplishments of the last years, making sure that we are actually getting it across the finish line and delivering in real ways, whether it's helping pass the Energy Transition Act and address global climate change, tackling gun violence prevention measures in our state, making sure that we are being clear about protecting reproductive freedom and justice, making sure that we are advancing our investments in early childhood education. And on all those issues, I haven't just been part of the conversation, I've been leading in a very real way. And, you know, I think that I probably have ventured to say that I have the most legislative experience in actually delivering on big legislative items and initiatives. And I'm very proud to bring that experience to this race. But I also want to say that, you know, that question that I get is such an important question. It's such a proof point for why we need to elect more young people to Congress, to every single position of power, because our generation does have a unique perspective when it comes to talking about student loan debt, when it comes to talking about gun violence, when it comes to talking about what climate change looks like, something that we are going to feel in a much different and impactful way. And, you know, Congress needs a change maker. Nowhere needs shaking up more than the halls of Congress. And think about who's doing that, Brian. It's people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. It's people like Richie Torres, young people who are leading the way to make a difference in the halls of power and not stopping. And so we can't wait on these issues. I couldn't wait because this community cannot wait to see the change that we need. Our future is not guaranteed. It's not certain. And if we don't have someone that's acting in a very real way, in doing the work, getting it across the finish line, delivering, then we can't guarantee a better tomorrow. But, you know, and then, you know, I also want to say, it's important to think about, we had historic turnout by young New Mexicans in the last election. And if we want to see that continue, if we want to see that progress, then we need to show that young New Mexicans can be part of the process. They can be part of the conversation when it comes to who is the next member of Congress, who we're electing. And so I'm very proud of the fact, Brian, that I would be the youngest Democrat in Congress. I think it's a perspective that is underrepresented and it's critical to bring forward.
That is awesome. I just posted your video with the Brigadier General. I took a minute to go look that up right away because it is really one of my favorite chats. And we'll do the same with the Ana Maria doll piece, because that was a really good one too. And that was the Moms Demand Action. And, you know, and Victor, I know you've done a lot of these interviews, and I hope you don't mind, but for me, it was important that I be able to, you know what I forgot to do? I forgot to turn on my live transcription. I just did that. Thank you, Dr. Dawson, for reminding me to do that. I just barely turned it on. I'm sorry. But it's a brand new feature that I found on Zoom, and I'm going to use it as often as I possibly can. Today, we just really wanted to take a dive into who is Victor Reyes and what drives you. And I think the comments are beautiful. I mean, people are loving your energy. They love that smile. They love that passion that you have for service. And it really makes a difference. But I would be remiss if I didn't kind of use the last 5 minutes or so, giving you an opportunity to maybe talk about those top 3 issues that, you know, you have, because you're such a good listener and because you've been out there on the campaign already for so long, and because you've been leading in this administration, what do you think here in the 1st Congressional District? What are those top 3 issues? I appreciate that lens we've talked about, whether it's the LGBTQI plus community lens that you look through, whether it's the fact that you are a young man of color, whether it's the fact that at 29 years old, you have a very complicated journey that has well informed your decision-making and your experience far exceeds your years. All those things are important. But what are the 3 issues that if you go to Congress, you know they've got to be front and center in your advocacy?
You know, fighting for healthcare for the 200,000 plus New Mexicans that currently are not covered has to be a priority. We need to make sure that we're working to pass a Medicare for all single payer healthcare system that's going to ensure that everybody has coverage, regardless of their employer. And, you know, we need to make sure that the immigrant community, that everybody is part of that conversation. You know, Brian, it wasn't more than a few weeks ago that I was talking to one of my neighbors. And he was, you know, looked sick and he looked ill, and we were walking to the mailbox, and I asked him and I said, you know, are you okay? Are you feeling sick? And he's like, no, I'm not feeling well. I said, go to a doctor, go get help. If you're not feeling well, go see someone. He said, I don't want to, because then I'm going to get a medical bill and I'm not going to be able to pay it, and it's going to be a stack. And I said, oh God, like what a world that we live in. What a country where we are so scared to get the care that we need, because we're scared of the cost of getting sick. And, you know, in this pandemic, communities of color have borne a disproportionate weight of this pandemic. And it's because of stories like the story of my neighbor, where underlying conditions where healthcare disparities are created because we don't have the same healthcare infrastructure when it means to meeting the needs that our communities have. And so that's going to be a priority for me. You know, I've long been made environmental justice a cornerstone of my work. I've worked with communities called colonias, areas that don't have water, don't have wastewater, to help them get some of the resources that they need. You know, I've dragged federal inspectors to the doors of colonias, wading in sewage up to my mid-shin, and I've seen some of those environmental injustices. You know, I've talked to individuals whose families have seen a legacy of the toxic legacy of uranium mining deal with cancer, you know, into generations because of that exposure. And I think addressing environmental injustice, making sure that in our community, the Kirtland jet fuel spill, that we have an opportunity, that we finally get the Air Force to make right that injustice that so many communities that so many neighborhoods are facing in our community, is a priority. Passing the Green New Deal, making sure that we have a mechanism to have those bold infrastructure investments, investing in transmission lines, investing in water, wastewater infrastructure, making sure that we can be renewable energy leaders in this state, I think is critical. Investing in broadband. And lastly, Brian, economic justice, whether that's making sure that every single individual earns a living wage. Being clear about that. I fought to raise the minimum wage at the state level in 2019 when there were people in our own party that were standing in the way of its passage, getting that across the finish line. And in Congress, we need to raise it to $15 an hour, make sure that we're clear on that, do things like universal childcare, make sure that we are looking at free public college and university. The whole economic justice package needs to be at the forefront.
Hey, beautifully stated, and what a clear agenda you have. And the clarity that you bring to the conversation is something that I think will serve the 1st Congressional District well should you be elected. I'm so thrilled that you're able to be on today. The last question I have for you, and we're right at the top of the hour, so hopefully Belen and all the folks that are Rocky and the great team members that you have that help coordinate to get you on Cafecito con Colon today won't object, but I'm going to take the liberty of maybe an extra 2 minutes, because I want to ask you, Victor, when you think about where you've been and where you are right now. I mean, coming from that, you know, 1st grade student and having a mom who exceeded so many expectations. When you look back, she was able to bring up such a tremendous young man in spite of so many challenges. And you've made such a difference in such a short period of time, whether it was in the legislature or whether it was helping run the campaign for our governor, and now lead with our governor. You've done so much, but when you look back on the journey of Victor Reyes, 29 years and 1 week, give us a snippet of what's that one thing that makes you smile the most when you think about it, from where you've been to where you are today. What makes you smile the most?
You know, I think about where we were in November before, when the pandemic was again surging. It was right before Thanksgiving. And, we were in a situation where families were worried about whether or not they were going to be able to put food on their children's table for Christmas, whether there was going to be food for Christmas. And there were a lot of folks that said that we shouldn't convene a special session, that it was too close to the holidays, that we shouldn't do it. And being able to be the architect of that plan, being able to build the coalitions of support we needed to get that done, is something that, oftentimes you pass a bill and you hope to see the impacts in years to come. And you hope that, years down the road, it's going to do X. But in a very real time, in less than a month, people started getting $1,200 payments. Food banks started being able to purchase more food. People were able to get assistance to pay for their rent. And that touches me, that I was able to be part of the solution in that moment to help people feel hope for just 1 second. And that, in these trying times, hope is not always as abundant as it needs to be. That really warms my heart. And I'm so grateful that I got the opportunity to do that for this community.
Well, and that you have done. And as a result, you have saved, literally, it's not an overstatement to say that you've saved lives. I think about people like you that are behind the scenes and working hard. I mean, our families were protected, lives were saved. You pushed back. You didn't cave to the pressure. There was so much pressure. I think now there's a little less pressure because people realize just how serious a journey we've been on for 1 year and 1 week. And it's really been remarkable to watch the growth of the number of people that are grateful for the work that you've done and the work that this administration has done. So I appreciate that. And I'm glad it makes you smile, because it should. When you save lives, you should smile, and you deserve it. And I'm sure your loved ones and the people that care about you, your friends, your family, that look to you with pride, they know, but I hope you take some time to just understand the positive difference you've made during this very, very difficult time. And it should make you smile. And I'm grateful for you personally.
That means a lot to me, Brian. Thank you. It means
You
a lot.
bet. You bet. It's been great. I appreciate you giving me the latitude of an extra 3 minutes, 180 seconds that you didn't sign up for, but here you are. And so I will land this plane now, unless there's something I didn't give you an opportunity to share that people want to know about you. I know you can go to victorreyes.com, Victor Reyes para Congreso. We're so glad that you're running. We're just thrilled to have you be a part of this conversation. You are the next gen. You are a great leader, and I'm just thrilled and honored to have been able to host you today, Victor.
I just appreciate you, Brian. Thank you for having me. Thank you for this conversation, for giving me this space. I'd say let's keep going, but I ran out of coffee. So we got to, that's my sign that it's time to reload. And so thank you for the opportunity. It means the world to me. This community means the world to me. I'm ready to fight like hell to make ththings happen. And I hope everyone will join me. victorreyes.org. Let's make it happen. Thanks, Brian.
You bet. victorreyes.org. Victor Reyes para el Congreso. Don't miss it. Check it out. Sign up. Put a note in the chat. I know his team is paying attention. He's got a great team of campaign volunteers and workers who are tuned in today. There's Joe Noriega. There's Belen. Vamos todos a Belen. Let's make sure that you reach out to his team and say, hey, I want to get on board with Victor Reyes for Congress. Thanks for joining me today. Today we're going to wrap it up, but tomorrow we'll have Francisco Fernandez joining us, another great candidate for Congress. We're grateful for Victor. I'm thankful for your friendship. We wish you the best of Tuesdays, and we'll look forward to seeing you soon. Drop by anytime. Victor Reyes para el Congreso.
You're awesome, Brian. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
All right, everybody, reach out to somebody in isolation. Tell them they're not alone. Tell them you heard about this incredible young 29-year-old man who's running for Congress. He's Victor Reyes, and he motivated and lifted you up today. We may be alone, but we're in this together. Amen. And let's make sure that we love one another. Reach out to veteranos, reach out to our elders, reach out to our marginalized community. Tell them you stand with them, you see them, you love them, and then we're going to get through this together. Thank you, Victor Reyes.